Good evening. Good evening. Hope everyone's doing well out there. Wanted to welcome everybody to the next CFF live stream hosted by the Cloud Family Foundation. Really excited. We've been doing these for several weeks now, and they've been really positive. We've been getting good feedback. We've been getting people giving donations. Again, that's the most important part of this. Giving the donations to the Cloud Family Foundation so we can continuously give out the scholarships. If you go to www.cff-inc.org, go ahead, take a look at our website. We have some of the pre-recorded or the previously recorded CFF live sessions there, so you can go there. You can take a look at some of the previous ones we had. Also, make sure you get a chance and you go donate. We're starting up for our laptop donation. That's going to be for 2022. Looking to give anywhere between 8 to 10 laptops away to grade schools. So we're really excited about that initiative. And as always, we do have our scholarship funds for the Robert Jones Scholarship, as well as our Cheryl Mitchell Hill Grant Foundation as well. So when you get a chance, make sure you go to the website www.cff-inc.org and look around. If you have any questions, you can sign up. Really looking forward to hearing people any questions you have. Tonight we have a very special guest and a good friend of mine that I've known for many years. Miss Tamiko Fletcher. She is of NASA and Kennedy Space Center. I'm going to bring her on now. We're going to have a great time tonight. Looking forward to this really good discussion. And also, don't forget, make sure you ask questions. We're always willing to field questions. If you look on there, you can post comments. And I'm going to bring Miss Tamiko on now. Miss Tamiko.
Hey, Justin. How are you?
How's everything going?
It's going. It's Monday, Tuesday. It's Tuesday. It's going well.
Well, yeah, no, it's always a good day, get up, I got a good workout this morning, really excited about that, trying to make sure I'm keeping fit here, even though we're still in a COVID environment, but that seems to be working out pretty well, I guess. And, I'm not lifting like I used to in high school, but it's still going pretty well.
Yeah, I think everyone's had their share of COVID-19, so I'm doing the same with my workouts in the morning.
I got you. And I know we've known each other for quite some time. We go back to our days with NESB, with Central Florida Professionals. I think that's where we officially first met. I'm really excited the fact that, from there, you and I are able to do this live stream, especially, when I brought it to your attention, I was like, I'm hoping she's going to say yes. And eventually I got you to say yes. So I was really happy that you did that.
I think a ghostwriter signed me up, actually. I don't think I signed up for this, but
no, you did. You can't backtrack on it now. It's all good. So you are the Chief Information Security Officer at NASA Kennedy Space Center. Can you give us a little bit of what that is, what that really entails?
So I'll give you the short answer, right? So I'm in charge of cybersecurity risk at Kennedy Space Center, NASA, and ensuring that those risks are minimized, right? We're never going to not have any cybersecurity risks. So my job is to make sure that we keep them to a minimum. So network security, applications, anything that needs to get on the Kennedy Space Center network, I need to make sure it is as secure as possible. And that's the gist of what my job is.
Okay, and how did you come to that job, right? I mean, that seems to me like a very unique job, right? That's not many people at KSC that's doing that. What was kind of your path to get you there?
Well, I'll give the Jesus gave me my job, right? But, really, I won't say I fell into it, but honestly, I have a cybersecurity background, a computer engineering background. And so my path just moved me and led me to cybersecurity. I've always been in IT. I've always done work in IT. So the most logical step for me was to get into IT security. Really, it's kind of what I did in college when I interned with NASA. It's my life, life comes full circle, as they say. So life brought me back into cyber. Really, it's about what we're doing now, right? Creating that network, and people who knew my work and the things I did in IT as a whole said, well, why don't you come and do some cybersecurity? And that's really how I got there. It wasn't anything more great than that, right? A light didn't appear, no dove on my shoulder. It was really more about the natural progression of my career that led me to cybersecurity.
And so understanding that there wasn't that lightning flash or anything along that line, but was there something in the career trajectory that kind of said for you, okay, yeah, that's where I'm going to go. I'm going to develop my career in security, or was it just you've had a number of things and it just kind of naturally happened? And I know you said that a little bit, but I know for most people there's always that moment where it's like, okay, it's right over there, and I'm trying to figure out if there was something that kind of really pushed you there.
I really wish I could say that, but I can't say that I knew I was going to be in this stage or this place in cyber, honestly. And again, this is my shared experience, right? So this is my story about how that happened. It really was, I kind of fumbled into it, landed
Mhm.
into it per se, but I've always had an interest and a knack in IT, right? And so once I graduated from the University of South Carolina, go Gamecocks, and got at NASA full time, I just progressed that way. I don't plan my life that way in general. So I definitely don't plan
Okay.
my career. I really keep an eye open and an open ear and open heart for what moves me, right? Really, what am I interested in? A big picture, of course, I have career goals and things I want to do, but more making sure I was in the right place at the right moment. I just don't live in that way. I really think things for me have come more organic. And
Right.
for me, it really was about um, presenting my work to others and then being open for when those opportunities presented themselves. So it's about, being prepared for when that door opened to walk into it. You hear that a lot, but it's really about making sure my work showed that I was ready for those next steps. I mean, if you look at my career, it's been an interesting one. Graduating with my degree and then going to NASA, I really thought I was going to be a lot more technical up front than I was. It's
Mm,
one of those things for me as an engineer. When I came into NASA, I really did contract management work in the IT field. And that was different for me, really understanding the business of the IT work. And so just again, progression from that and getting that foundation and understanding then led to, working with end users and working with operating systems and desktops. And then you get from desktops to networks. And then from networks, again, I kind of stumbled back into cybersecurity from being out of it for a very long time. But always being prepared, for that technical job to come and open its doors. So that's kind of how I landed there. I never, had this. I want to be a chief information security officer or I want to go into cybersecurity. But the world we live in is very prevalent, job market skill set to have. And so I'm just very thankful, to be in this area, in this field.
And so you mentioned a couple of points there, and I kind of want to pull a thread a little bit. And the one thing I always like is the word the knack, right? Most engineers have seen the Dilbert comic of the knack, right? But you talk about working hard and letting things happen naturally, right? So let's pull that thread a little bit. And we really want to talk about the experiences that you've gone through, being a black woman, being just a woman in a very male-dominated environment altogether, right? So my question to you, and I know I have my own beliefs, I guess, from being a black man as well. But do you feel like you've had to work twice as hard, right? I've always, we had this conversation within my ERG recently that, you almost feel like you have to work twice as hard. Was that something that you experienced? Is that something that kind of came around where it's now not only you feel that you have to work twice as hard, but your colleagues are feeling that way as well?
Um, I mean, as you said, right, in the Black experience, I think the Black experience lends to that. I think our parents, teach us that up front, right? You have to work twice as hard, to get where you need to go versus, one of your non-Black or non-color counterparts, right? I think that's just beat in us from young age, right? Especially studying. Do I feel that way now? Of course. Is it perceived or is it reality? I think it's a little bit of both. I'm certainly harder on myself than someone else may be, but I have these internal standards or self-imposed standards that I definitely have to keep up with. And so it's so funny when you say that. Um, I work late. I usually am up early. I usually work until about 6:30, right? So I do work a lot more hours than most people in my office does. And I remember my manager, asking me about an email she sent that I forgot. And I asked a colleague, I was like, did you get that email? It's like, I don't read half of her emails. I was like, why am I the only one trying to stay up till, 1 o'clock in the morning to read every single email? But for me, it's just my self-imposed standard, really to keep, the notch up one, to make sure that I'm always coming with excellence. So that it's a little bit of both. It's a little bit of reality and perception for me. I definitely don't ever want to feel like I'm falling off. I really want to make sure I'm showing as an example, even to my not just my colleagues, my cohorts who are also managers, but even to my team, right? The people that I lead, that I wouldn't ask them to do something that I wouldn't do myself of them. And so I always tell them too, I'm the only workaholic that's permitted in the office, right? But I definitely think that I have to work harder than my counterparts. And a lot of that is just generational. A lot of that is self-imposed. And sometimes I find out that that's really not the reality. But for me to sleep well at night is something I have to keep up with. It's a standard that I have to have. I have to. I don't know how else to say. I really have to make sure that I'm taking care of my business, that things aren't being left unresolved in my office.
So you find that by you maybe working twice as hard as natural for you, that it may be a less that it's pointed out potentially that or you feeling that other people feel that you need to because that's just natural for you.
Yeah, I think it is. I think I've set that bar that I'm going to be working. So there it is an expectation from people that if you ask Tamiko to do something, it's going to get done and it's going to get done well. And so I have no problem with that. But then it's added pressure on myself, right, to make sure that I'm continuing to live up to that. One of the things that I think I think as a worker, or at least for me as a manager, I have to also give myself grace when something doesn't get accomplished, right?
Mhm.
Because I know that if I push myself too much, in one direction, there's burnout and all those other things that they associate with trying to have a long career. I've been with NASA for 20 years. I like to at least get another 10, maybe 15 out of myself, but I don't want it to lead to burnout. But I definitely think that there is a perception that we have to work harder because it's how we've been raised or generational, but and also a reality, because the reality is there are stereotypes about being a black woman or a black person in the workforce, that we are, or at least I would say I am, wanting to make sure that stereotype is, minimized from my standpoint, so that the work I do lends itself to another black person coming on board, being in this position or any other position, right? So it's a lot of a little mix of both, to be honest.
And that's actually an excellent point. So you're not just being you for you. You're being you for the next person to set the expectation that they are going to achieve a similar level of success and not feel that the playing field maybe not level, right? So by you doing that and you working that hard sets the expectation for others around you for not only just for black women, but for even some of your colleagues that may not be black, that they need to step up too, I'm assuming.
Yeah, and also too that um, as I stand on the shoulders of giants, someone's going to stand on my shoulder as well, right? So, as we do this work, whatever that work is for someone, engineering, business, whatever it is, as someone has paved the way for us, we are certainly paving the way for others. I mean, you can't walk into a room full of men and be one of very few women, or a room full of non people of color and be, the only, not understanding that that's really what you are doing, right? And how sad it is too in 2021 that
Mhm.
that's continuing to need to happen. But if it's still a need to happen, then I don't mind putting in the extra step, being excelling in what I do, to guarantee someone behind me an opportunity similar. They took a chance on me. I would want for that chance to resonate to someone else. That's really what we're here for, right?
Right.
Building upon generation to generation.
And do you feel like the demographics, do you feel like there's challenges within the demographics itself? Meaning, do you feel like there may be a specific demographic that holds you more accountable, right, versus another, or does it feel like kind of a level playing field where everybody expects you to be great, right? I mean, I expect you to be great, knowing you, right? But is there an expectation that you feel like you know everybody is having a level of expectation on you based off of your prior experience and prior work?
Well, I mean, I think it's a mix, right? It's not a black and white. The
Okay.
people who put the most pressure on me are us.
Okay. Fair enough. All right.
I will start with us, right? Because of being the only one in the room. Once you have a seat at the
Mhm.
table, you are helping to make decisions about how others can come into the room, right? So of course, again, they're looking at. I would expect for my community to look at me to make sure I'm doing them justice, right? So that goes back to always wanting to make sure I excel well, or be the last one to leave the office, whatever it needs to get done to be a reflection of myself and my community. So
Mhm.
we certainly put pressure on me to do that, and then also to outside of our community. Um, I think that that's the case as well. There's that. I hate to say looking for a fall, right? Or looking for, because the door was open, looking for to see if I'm going to succeed or not. But I hope that my reputation and again the work that I do have lend itself to say, oh, it's Tamiko. I know it's going to get done right, right. And
Mhm.
so that pressure kind of falls off a little bit from those outside of our community. I'm okay with our community because I know, we're family. Like I told you earlier when we were about to start, we're amongst family. So I would expect for my community to correct me or to congratulate me as well. But I certainly want to make sure too that when folks look into what I'm doing, it's not just for me, but it's for others. I pride myself on even my office being a very diverse office. I display that with my management. It's so funny. I actually have the one of the youngest office in my directorate, so not just youngest, but even more diverse. And I pride myself with that. And it's been an interesting challenge. I've only been in this position for like 2 years, so we've made some really great strides in that time frame.
Well, but if you've been in it 2 years, I've known people who've gone in roles and been out of it faster than that. I mean, so I mean, some of the challenges that we face, it's clear that you may go into a role and think it's for you, but it's maybe not. But at least for you, you've owned this, right? I think this is where you've kind of built your career up to this point. So looking forward, what's the forward look like, right? Chief information officer. Are we taking CISO off, or yeah, no? What? And when I ask that question, because it's always asked of me, right? You've got here, Justin. Your role is really good. What's next, right? So there's always. I feel like as a black man that I always have to think of what's the next challenge I'm going to go to and not just be in the moment of what I'm in now, right? And there's always that I've got to think of what's going to be the next hardest thing that I'm willing to take on. Do you feel that you're kind of like, I know where the next challenge of life is going to take me, or you still got figuring out to do in this role before you start thinking what the next kind of what's forward looking for you?
Justin, I think that I totally agree with what you said. People always want to know, what's the 2 to 3 year or 3 to 5 year goal, and this is a stepping stone to what next, right? And I
Right.
think that there is actually a need to sit into what you are in now. I will give you the standard answer I give my supervisors at my performance review. I will be in doing the things that find me opportunities and challenges. And if those opportunities and challenges are with NASA, I will continue to be with NASA. If they are not, I will be someplace else, right? And so, because I think so often we are always looking ahead that we don't give the moment the credit it deserves,
Okay.
right? And so I definitely have a plan, have a thought about where I want to go next. The logical step is CIO. For some people, they would say, what's the next step? You're going to be a CIO? I don't know. I really am living in this present position and
Okay.
trying to figure out what gems I want to take from it. Because for me, the job itself, especially as a supervisor, so I'm not only the Chief Information Security Officer for NASA, I'm also the Chief of the IT Security Office. So I'm dual hatted at Kennedy Space Center. And so for me, it's really the people, right? I really have a desire to make sure I leave people whole when I come to an organization.
Okay.
And sometimes that doesn't always take you to the next logical step, if that makes sense, right? But CIO could be an option. I won't definitely I won't turn it down. But for me, I really am living in this present position, and I haven't allowed myself to think too far ahead.
Okay.
But I definitely am looking to see what the wind will blow my way next. But I have thought about those things. I have thought about, a CIO position or some type of, in the federal government, we call a senior executive service member, which is another step like an executive director to a venture to. So I will say that I haven't not thought about that, but I haven't put too much stock into it because I don't want it to take away from where I am currently and what really brings me purpose in the current job.
No, I
Fair?
get it. No, this is absolutely fair. And so this is always a mark of when a good session happens, is that questions happen before we get to the end. So I'm gonna drop a couple that I'm starting to see come into the chat.
Oh, oh.
And I think they're timely as well, right? So the first question is, do you feel that the expectations are different for you? Yeah, I know you have different expectations for yourself, but do you feel there's different expectations, meaning that you are expected to do more, to be at the same, and I'll take it one step further, but to be at the same level as your peers? So,
Mm, absolutely. Absolutely. I felt like I needed to have. Even now, I'm supposed to be studying. I need to get in the books for a certification, right? That I feel like I need to have that for the next step as well. I feel like there is an expectation as a woman of color coming into an area that I have to have, bachelor's, master's, PhD, certifications after certifications to prove, that I am qualified to do what I do. And so I think there is, but as I've grown older, and I'm not as young as I appear in this camera, but as I've grown older, I really have more self awareness and confidence about who I am and what I bring to the table,
okay,
and less about comparing. Really less about my counterparts. Having what I have. I know kind of who I am and what I bring that's may technically not be equivalent to someone else, but it's different and it's unique to who I am, and no one else can bring what I bring to the table, right? So, but do I feel like there are expectations of? I most certainly do. I feel like every day there's this need to be on top from my cohorts. This need to, make sure I get that certification, which I need to get back into studying, but make sure I get that certification, make sure I have my credentials lined up. I definitely do. But I'm balancing that with what I am comfortable with,
okay.
and knowing who I am and being secure in that. But definitely.
And so the next question actually kind of is, it almost piggybacks off of that. Have you ever encountered where people are thinking less of you and you having to prove them wrong? That's it. I mean, some of these questions are starting to get into the meat and
Are these
being
people following my life? Oh my
yeah,
gosh.
yeah,
um, you know, Yeah, like I said, when you're one of few or first in rooms, you definitely maybe coming against I feel like I definitely am coming against a stereotype or a perception about what a black woman brings to the table. So I definitely feel like other people are putting that expectation on me that I'm having to bring more, to the table, do more. Right? I feel that pressure, and it is something that you're constantly thinking about. How do you resolve that internally, right? Because it's really an internal thing, and part of that is having that confidence in yourself. But
Right.
yeah, definitely do. These are good questions, so
And like I said, they're coming from the LinkedIn community. I can't even see who they are, right? So that's even better. I gotta tell you, so I forgot to do this. McWillina's on. I forgot to give her a shout out because she gave a shout out to Nesby. Sorry, I wasn't ignoring you, McWillina. Making sure I'm giving you a shout out. Um, but it's funny because it's kind of like I find myself even now, 20 plus years in industry, at times still having a chip on my shoulder,
yeah,
right? And showing that, I have to prove people wrong, right? Even though, like I said, 20 years in, spent 18 years in one company, I'm a little bit more than 2 years into this one. There's still that level of I'm not comfortable with being comfortable, right? And so there's always that little chip on my shoulder that I'm still going to be fighting for the next thing. And again, the people who know me in the office, I try to act like I'm an introvert. Well, I think I'm an introvert, but most of my
really does.
colleagues tend. I am. I am
You're the
actually
introvert
very
that
much
started a
introvert.
podcast. Okay, all right.
Yes,
Cool.
so that the two things are not equal, right? I mean,
Oh
I
yeah,
can still be an introvert.
yes.
Um,
But I
but
think too, that whole sense of trying to prove people wrong also sometimes pull the best out of you, right? And it definitely keeps the
Agreed,
fire
agreed.
underneath you. It makes you, like you said, not satisfied with where you are and keep pressing.
Hmm.
Again, that goal is to just have that balance, right? To that you're not so focused on always proving people wrong that you lose yourself too, right? And be assured of who you are and what you bring to the table, right? Like I have these degrees and the documentation. Why do I have to keep having these conversations with folks, right? But I think it does helps you to not get comfortable,
Hmm.
right? And to for like I said, for me with being a supervisor too, for to show my folks how important it is to challenge oneself. You know, that you talk about Nesby, that's really how I started, in Nesby and working with Nesby and putting my name in the hat for different positions was to challenge myself because I consider myself I won't say a truly introvert, but I consider myself a shy person, which introvert and shy aren't the same as well. But I really forced myself to be more active with Nesby to get more comfortable talking to people. And even agreeing to do your podcast
I was
is a
about to say that. I was about to do
is
that.
a way for me to get more comfortable having these kind of conversations and sharing your story and really networking, really expanding your network. Because again, like I said earlier, I got into these positions too based on people who knew me, who knew my work, building that network at work, coming on a Justin Cloud's, family foundation podcast. It's all about really showcasing yourself and being honest and authentic in who you
Mhm.
are and sharing those stories, right? Right. People may see me on the outside, or I've even had people actually say at work, I didn't know you were an engineer. I would have never thought you were an engineer. And I don't know if I should feel some type of way about that or be thankful, but I think as you speak to people, as you talk with folks, they kind of get comfortable with who you are and what you bring to the table, and they take a chance on you. And that's important as well. I think that's important as well. But yeah, that chip on the show you needed to keep that fire lit, to not get comfortable.
No, I totally agree, and I appreciate that commentary, right? Because I'm like, when I ask you to come on this, and you talk about the mental, the what you had to go through to kind of get yourself ready for it, right? And again, I understand it, um, you know, but I appreciate that you've done it, right? And then I also say, I'm like, you're one of the smartest people I know. You should probably be in Mensa, or at the same time. So I'm glad you were your intelligence is only coupled by your willingness to come on and talk to make awareness to some of the things that you're doing. I kind of want to take a little bit of a step back, right? And we talked about the industry for a little bit. One of the things that we talk about is like girls in STEM. We talk about some of the initiatives that are happening right now at the elementary school, grade school level. How important do you think those things are, and do you think that they are having an impact overall?
They're very important. Again, to break down stereotypes about who engineers are, who coders are. Um, they are having an impact, and they're very important. Can more be done? I certainly think more can be done. Right? Avenues like this. Every area isn't going to have a Black girls code. Right? Every area isn't going to have an opportunity for someone to participate in something like this, or a SWE Girls Engineering Week for Girls event, or a NESB Engineering Week event at a college or a local school. It goes back to the other podcast I watched called the Digital Divide. So if you guys haven't watch that one too. But I think it's important too for folks to see outside of what the stereotypes. We always talk about representation matters, and it really does. It really matters for other young girls to see other girls doing what they're doing or what they're aspiring to do,
Right.
and to share those stories with them. I'm from a super small town in South Carolina, the smallest of towns in South Carolina, right? And so I try to make sure I go back home to my community to show someone who worked for NASA, who I honestly absolutely did not think in a million years I worked for NASA, right? And I go back to my hometown where there are still first generation, college students going into school to tell them that it can be done, as well as you can reach your goals. And I think that's what, those types of organizations do. They certainly show the representation. They show a Black girl, we know, with dreadlocks or natural hair or relaxed hair or whatever, shades in different ethnicities and backgrounds, doing things that girls want to do. Is helpful and beneficial. It always will be. It's no different from Barack Obama being the first Black president, right?
Yeah.
Seeing that it actually can be done, not just hearing about it, or it's this mythical creature out there, is important. And those organizations are doing great work with what they're doing in those areas. And definitely more can be done. These types of the conversations, I do mentor at the office. I do mentor. I've done, as you said, NESB. I did the pre-college initiative, and I try to have those types of impact where I can. That's how you eat the elephant, right? One bite at a time, where you can show that this is normal, right? Really showing that this is not outside of what could be possible.
And, it's funny you mentioned that because, the one thing, my little girl has decided she wants to be an architectural engineer, right? And, the one thing that I've been struggling to find is a mentor for her, right? Especially one that may be a Black female that can talk about some of the experiences that she's had going through architectural engineering as well. So always looking for not just mentors for her, but also mentors for people at work that are looking for to understand experiences so that way they can go through it. I had the great fortune of my first manager I ever had coming out of college was a Black man that went to an HBCU, and it was, I was like, you got to be kidding me. He went to Jackson State, and it was the fact that immediately walking into the door, I had somebody who had almost the experience I did coming out of college. Obviously, a little bit different, in Jackson State 20 years prior to me graduating, but at the same time, having somebody that experienced that walked into a huge company and still was able to be successful coming from an HBCU, whereas 20 years ago HBCUs were not as relatively known and paid attention to as they are now, right? So I can only imagine 40 years ago him coming from Jackson State, starting an industry, how much that was a challenge for him, and not having potentially a Eddie that was my mentor, right? So one of the things I struggle with just overall is finding good mentors for junior level employees, and even again, my little girl's looking for her architectural engineering mentor at the same time. So if there's somebody out there that's like, hey, I'm an architectural engineer, please feel free to send me a message on LinkedIn so that way I can have her having some of that experience as well. And so the one thing I talk about, and it's kind of interesting, right? We talk about starting in the elementary school, getting people involved, and even once you get into industry, um, being able to really have that impact. One question that I've asked, and I've actually asked in like Nesbian a couple times, as a black man, right? If I'm observing a black woman or a woman in general, right, that may be having an issue in the office, right? Maybe she's not be given the respect that she deserves. Maybe she's not being listened to. Is it okay for me to intervene? And the reason I asked that question, and I've asked it a couple times, and I seem to ask it all the time, is am I doing good by intervening, or am I having a negative impact by implying that you need a man to step in to kind of help foster the discussion? And I've gotten several answers, so I'll pose a question for you, not in knowing that I've had at least both sides of the fence kind of give me an answer for that one.
That's an interesting question. I will definitely say that's an interesting question. Um, I Let me make sure I answer.
Uh,
I will say you better.
yes, ma'am.
Is
That
what I
answers
will
that
say,
question.
right? I will say you better, and I say that with a couple caveats, right?
Okay.
Do you have you worked with this person? Do you know their work, right? Because your name is also on the line, but
Mm-hmm.
also from a place of what I said earlier, right? Giving people a fair share, right? Giving people a fair opportunity. And even if you don't know that person's work, I think it's something to be said to voice when people aren't being treated fairly. And I think that, that's the portion that is important when you're speaking up, is that you're wanting to make sure that people are just in general being treated fair. I had an interesting situation where I did know someone apply for a job, and I heard backhanded, because of certain things they may not have gotten an interview for the job, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because I knew that person, I went down to my supervisor's management's office and said, "What is this ruckus I'm hearing?" Right? Whether the person gets the job or not, they should at least get an interview and be treated fairly. And
Mm-hmm.
that's truly what you want from black, white, Asian, whatever. But in our community, I think it's important for us to step up and speak for our fellow community members, right? To really make sure that they are being fairly, because so often they are not. More often than not, they are not. So it's important for us to speak up. And if you have that reservation, ask the person, right? What is the harm to say, "Hey, Justin, I heard this thing, do you mind if I say something?"
Right.
Because then you will, instead of a perceived, am I doing it right or wrong? And I hate to use those terms, right or wrong, but if I'm being helpful, you get a confirmation on whether or not you're being helpful instead of making that assumption, right? And there are times too that people will speak up when they say, "I heard this thing," and they may not even know these things are happening in the background. But my short answer is yes, you definitely need to, because again, what all that we are doing is, again, building the ladder for someone else to climb up to the
Mm-hmm.
next step, and to cut down those stereotypes and perceptions about who Black people are, what we do, and what we bring to the table. And that to me is my job. That is my job every day, going into the office, not just for my community but for others.
And now I guess I have a third answer now, right? Because I didn't get before you better. I
You
didn't know
better.
I didn't get that one before, right? And what I agree that regardless of the circumstance, right? I think I bring it up in context because when we talk about level playing field and we talk about uh, equal respect, it is it the man, should he be willing to go speak up and kind of trying to take control? And that's why I asked that, right? Because I don't want it to sound like um you shouldn't be speaking up in every scenario, but in the context of the conversation of Black women in industry, I always pose that question because I always get the, that's not a bad question, right? So I'm going to keep that one going
Definitely
because,
keep that one and keep a score of what responses you get,
yeah,
because it
I'm
makes
going to
me
have
think,
to now.
right? I just, I just have never heard it. I haven't heard it yet from a Black man helping a Black woman. I would hope so. I would hope that any opportunity you have to help a Black woman, that someone does take it, because so often we are ignored, silenced. I have a running joke in my office, no one listens to me, right? Because I'll say something and uh, they'll go off and do their own thing and then come back and like, I think Tamiko said something about that, right? And then what I said is in fact what needs to occur, but I don't beat the door down and all those other things either. But anytime that you can give a voice to a Black woman, help their voice, you know, magnify it is helpful, because so often we aren't listened to. I mean, I could only imagine even on your end, right? That if the question was asked, should a Black woman help a Black man? I'm going to say you better again, right? I'm going to always say that because that is our job in our community, and it's our job as humans to make sure people are treated fairly. So yeah, that's either way you spin it. I would certainly say certainly we should be helping each other out where we can.
Well, I don't need my grandmother rolling over her grave or haunting me because I didn't do that. So yes, I'm not going to experience that because that's the last thing I need this Asian woman trying to do is haunt me for the rest of my life. No, that's not going to happen. Um, so we have about maybe about 10 minutes or 10-15 minutes or so left. I know we haven't had a ton of questions, but I do see a number of people out there. So I want to give people an opportunity. If you do have any more questions, I want to take a pause and give the opportunity to ask questions. We'll keep going here, keep having some good conversation, but I didn't want people to feel like they had to wait to the immediate end. So if you do have a question, drop it in the chat. I'll be happy to answer those. In the meantime, you're doing what I would call fantastic work at KSC, right? I've seen some of the articles and the like, and I read at least the one that you had out there not too long ago. Is there something that, as you looked through your past, right, that if you knew about or that you wish you could have avoided, that you would be telling 21-year-old Tamiko, don't do that or do this?
Oh wow. I always find these questions fascinating about, what would you tell your younger self? All these lessons you've learned. And I won't have any specific item, but I really would just say in general, and something I would, share that you tell your daughter as a woman, as a Black woman, to always trust yourself. Like really trust yourself because it will be okay. It will work out, right? Discovering this confidence level in at this place in my life, I really wish I had that when I was younger. I really wish I had that confidence in myself to be so assured of who I am, right? And I think that I've grown that throughout the years. One of my friends, she's raising two gorgeous daughters. And that is one thing I see with interacting with her daughters. They are so sure of themselves and so unafraid to ask questions and how she responds, that I really would tell my younger self that to ask those hard questions, to be sure of yourself when you're in a room. Don't always go to the back, right? Don't always go to the little corner, be that shy person, but be confident in who you are because it'll all work out. That's really what I would take to my younger self, because that's the lesson I have learned over the years of things that I probably should have spoken up on that I didn't because I didn't have that confidence. Um, and that understanding of it wouldn't take away from who I was to ask some of those harder questions of my colleagues or of my cohorts right now as managers or my peers. So I kind of lean in a lot more now than I I would back then. And that has gotten me more places than not, right? Than taking the quieter stance. So that would be what I would tell my younger self, to just own into that confidence up front.
Understood. And I appreciate that. So I'm not seeing any additional questions in the chat. We're right around 45 after. Um, do you have any parting thoughts or any words of wisdom? And I know I didn't put that on some level of, hey, I'm going to ask you this, but is there something that you want to leave the audience with that you think is important, not only just for Black women, but in women in general to take heed of, or just if there are parting thoughts you may have overall?
No, I really would say what I just said. That there are so it's so often that we don't own that confidence in who we
Mhm.
are, that we do a disservice to ourselves, right? And as a Black woman in engineering, that is something that has helped me as I've grown in my career. Really um, being assured of who I am. Making sure that my expectations are fair to me and to others, right? Not levying, expectations that can't be realized onto someone else, and then getting frustrated in between, right? But those would be my parting gift words to someone. The parting things I would want to say is really to own who you are. There's always this perception as women that we have to, come hard and be someone that we aren't when we walk into a boardroom or into a group or an area or a project. We have to portray this over assertiveness, overly be hard on the outside and not own being a woman in any room and situation, right? I really do think that it is a beautiful thing to be a woman who can pick up on the technical, but also nurture people and understand how you are crafting, creating, molding people's careers. That's important for me as I am in this position now, but also the confidence in realizing who I am and what I do bring to the table helps that chip on the shoulder not get too out of whack. But that's the important part of just being authentic to who you are and bringing that confidence every day that you show up into the office. And that's something I wouldn't change for the world. It really was. Even taking this little long to get here is something I wouldn't change either.
Gotcha. Well, I appreciate you coming on tonight. I think this was an awesome, awesome conversation. I thank you, Ms. Tamiko, for being willing to do this and being such a great participant at the same time.
It wasn't that bad. I might actually do it again for you if you need another
Well, once you become
discussion.
chief information officer, I got that queued up already. Yeah, didn't know. As soon as you said that, I was like, check, chief information
Oh,
officer. That's the next one.
all right, Justin, I'll hold you to it.
Well,
It's been a
everybody, thank
pleasure.
you.
Thank you for
I'm
the
sorry.
invite. I said it's been a pleasure. Thank you for the invite.
Thank you. So everybody out there, again, thank you for joining. I ask that you go to our website, www.cff-inc.org. Again, on the website, you'll not only find some of the previous CFF live stream, also make sure you go donate. All your donations are tax deductible. Go to either the laptop donation fund or the scholarship fund. So thank you again. And everybody have a wonderful evening.